She's a friend who'll show up with coffee or wine when you need it most, but probably wine. Good vibes are on the way. Welcome to Erin O'Malley's Feel Good Frequency.
Hi, welcome back to the Feel Good Frequency. I'm Erin O'Malley. I love that you're here. And I am constantly looking for the good people that make the world a better place, because we hear so much about the negative, about people that aren't so great and that really aren't making things any better. And I've had enough of that. So something happened this week that just is such a great example of the good people that are out there. Every year, we are blessed enough to get to go to a Celtics game, and we sit courtside. And our special needs boy just can't get enough of the Celtics. And being that close, he just gets so excited to see the players and how fast the action is. And it's awesome every year to see the game and to see it through his eyes. Well, we were fortunate enough to be sitting right next to a gentleman you may have heard of, Wick Grafsbeck, who is the owner, or he actually just sold the team for like $6.1 billion. But he is still the CEO and the governor of the Celtics. I did not know that a basketball team had a governor, but that's not the story. The story is that he saw Gabe. We were standing up and watching the players practice before the game, and he came over to us and he handed last year's championship ring to Gabe so we could take a picture of it. And it was fascinating. Gabe was looking at all the gorgeous diamonds. And then Wick said, "Hey, you guys want to check out the locker room?" And we were like, yeah. So we bring Gabe to the Celtics locker room. Drew Holiday is there, and so is Derek White. We got pictures. We were just in a whole other world. Gabe was so overwhelmed. You could just see the look on this boy's face, like, I cannot believe this is happening. It was so exciting and so unexpected. And then, as if this wasn't already incredible enough, Wick brings us across the hall to a room with just tons of apparel, Celtics, everything. And he's going through row by row by row, and he's looking for something specific. And I have, of course, no idea what it is. And he ends up pulling out this championship hat that has this gold embroidery on the front. It's gorgeous. And he hands it to Gabe. And he said, I hope you guys have a great day. It was so awesome to meet you. And I am just in awe of this gentleman. And then we go back out and we're in the front row and we're just having a blast during the game. And when we were leaving, we actually saw Wick again. And he said, "Hey, this is my buddy Gabe." And he's introducing Gabe to other people. But seriously, that is just one example of somebody who is an incredible human making the world a better place. And let's face it, he doesn't have to impress anybody. That man has everything that money can buy. But you know what it can't buy? It can't buy kindness. It can't buy decency. And he is a sparkling example of how just something that you think of as maybe no big deal can really make somebody's day. And when I say that, I mean maybe you're walking into a building and somebody's behind you and you hold the door open. You have no idea what that person is handling in life. That person could have just found out the worst news ever, and just somebody being that innocently kind can really make that person think, "Oh, wow, I didn't expect somebody to do that for me." Something so small. You're in line at McDonald's and the person in back of you is searching for change, and you decide you're going to buy whatever the heck they just ordered. It's the smallest things in life that can make a big difference. So please try to spread that as best you can, because I'm telling you, these are things that people will never forget. I understand the Celtics experience was above and beyond, but even the littlest things really can make the biggest difference. So today I have great people to introduce you to. One woman who beat the odds. And when I say beat the odds, I mean this woman had polio when she was a little girl. And she somehow, some way, even though she was told she was going to be in a wheelchair for her life, finished the Boston Marathon. This is Mary McManus, and I am so excited to talk to you. Your story is incredible.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so thrilled to be a part of this incredible feel good frequency because you certainly do put out a lot of feel good frequency vibes. And I just feel so grateful and really blessed to be on this podcast with you today.
You are so kind. You have such a positivity about you that just even reading your story, it just, my heart lifted. You had polio when you were a child. How was life after that?
There was really nothing normal about my life except in school. I was high school valedictorian. I prided myself on my intellect because physically, the polio virus was tough enough, but I was blessed with a physiatrist, rehab medicine doctor, and his physical therapist was incredible. Just talk about an earth angel. So I was truly blessed, even though I was initially paralyzed from the neck down, and then I regained movement on my right side, but the left side took a really long time to come back. Unfortunately, my mom was addicted to prescription pain medication, and my dad was an alcoholic. So after 3 years, I was somewhat recovered from the polio, but I was enduring trauma every night. But I used my brain, my mind, and as I said, I was high school valedictorian. I went to Boston University, and then I went to Boston College and got my master's in social work. And I worked at the Department of Veterans Affairs. It was just wonderful, except lurking under the surface were these symptoms that I ignored. I was a type A personality, as so many polio survivors were and are. And I wasn't paying attention to myself. I wasn't practicing good self-care. But boy, was I a great social worker. I won awards from the blinded veterans, from the POWs. And then I started having these symptoms. I couldn't breathe that well. I had trouble swallowing. The limp from polio returned. I was tired all the time. I got very depressed and anxious. Well, who wouldn't when your body is suddenly breaking down before your very eyes? And it took 10 years for me to finally say, whoa, I need to figure out what's going on.
You couldn't breathe well for 10 years before you got help? I feel like this is such an SOS, especially women are the last to take care of ourselves. Everybody else around us is doing just fine. We make sure that our husbands, our kiddos, everybody goes to the doctors except us. And this is such a red flag. I have never heard of anybody ignoring something like that for 10 years. You're a walking miracle.
And that's, why I share my story. We really have to take care of ourselves. It is absolutely vital. And it's interesting you said, whoa, 10 years, because when I went to the post-polio clinic, it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So I had to go through all these tests, and they tested muscle nerve function. And sure enough, there were a lot of residuals from the polio virus, but there was a disc pressing on the nerve in my neck. So I was also experiencing facial paralysis at times. I had pain down my right arm. I would sit and I would be attending to my veterans. And in between patients, I remember sitting there and saying, I wonder if I'm having a stroke or a heart attack. And then it would pass. And I said, okay, well, I guess it's not that serious.
I have to ask, what was the catalyst at year 10 that finally made you go, I'm going to see somebody?
I had trouble walking up the stairs in my house. I was very depressed. Like, I didn't care if I woke up the next day. And I said, I can't live like this, but I can't not live. I had twins. They were in their 20s at the time, but still, they were my kiddos and my husband. And, by all appearances on the outside, I had a wonderful life, but inside I was falling apart. It was really the dark night of my mind, body, and soul.
So the story turns around and gets better. I love that. Tell me about it.
What happened was, so at first I listened to the advice of the post-polio clinic. I went back into a leg brace, a 12 leg brace. I walked with a cane, and I went through some physical therapy at the post-polio clinic. And after I had the trigger injection in my neck, Dr. Elab referred me to the Spalding downtown, Spalding Rehab. So I met this amazing woman, Allison Poole, and we worked together, and she got my mind and body beginning to connect. And she said to me, "You are not destined to live the rest of your life in a wheelchair."
It's amazing how one person can make a huge difference in our lives.
It's the God's honest truth. You just need one person to believe in you, or to believe that what you're being told is different, or what you've been told your whole life is different. And yeah, I started working with her in January. And in February, I said, I have to pray. I really need divine guidance. I've always had a strong faith. Faith is what got me through polio and trauma. I have to pray. I mean, I was in a leg brace. I was told that I would spend the rest of my life in a wheelchair, that I'd probably need a feeding tube because I had difficulty swallowing. And all of a sudden, this poem came to me. And I typed this poem called Running the Race. And all these feelings just poured out of me. I kept everything inside kind of thing. And then the poem turned. It's a very lengthy poem. And it said all these things. And then it said, well, in my mind's eye, I'm running a 10K race. And I went, whoa, how can I be running a 10K race? I've never run a day in my life. Why is this in my imagination? Erin, I said, this is really weird. And I just kept coming back to, well, in my mind's eye, I'm running a 10K race. And I started imagining myself running free. I imagine myself dancing in puddles. I also wrote about gratitude, the gift of polio, and really embracing my challenges as gifts. And so I'm writing poetry. And one of the things that the team did tell me that I thought was really important was that I had to leave my career. And I was a social worker for 25 years. And I'm like, well, hello, what am I going to do now? And I didn't know, except when I started writing the poetry, I said, oh, well, maybe I'll become a poet. You talked about how you felt something in your soul when you started this podcast. Well, I really want to, let the listeners know it's not about the outcome. It's about what you bring to the situation.
I could not agree with that more. I said all through my cancer journey, I kept saying, cancer hates positivity. And I was so bound and determined to beat it, to come out with a story to make life even better after it, that became such a focus for me that I was probably one of the only crazy people that looked forward to going to chemo, because I was like, one more round, I got you. Like, it was just, I knew that I was going to beat it, that there was going to be a higher purpose to it. And I feel like when you really embrace a certain attitude, it can, at the very least, help you through the worst of times.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and what's the worst that can happen? It already happened. So here we are. Yeah. So with my manuscript of my first poetry book in hand, I walked out of the VA. Miraculous things happened, like all these things were falling into place. I was still terrified. I mean, you take a leap of faith like that. And so it was like,
plus it's everything you had been working for and doing, pretty much your whole adult life. And that's a scary leap to take. I understand.
I know you.
I get it.
Unfortunately, you were pushed off the ledge.
But I was ready to fly. I'm ready to fly.
Oh my God, Erin, are you ever? Are you ever? So I took that leap of faith, and I was discharged from outpatient PT with Allison. And in October, I met this woman, and she starts telling me about her business. And her business is in-home personal training. I said, well, do you think maybe you could help me get a little stronger? At that point, Erin, I was still not able to get off the toilet seat independently. I had a shower chair. I had all this equipment. I was still using my cane and my leg brace, although I was feeling so much better after leaving the stress of my job. And she said, well, quoting Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right. I love that quote. Gosh, is that true?
So I said, okay, all right, let's see. So we started working together. I couldn't pass the initial assessment. But she made me feel so good, even though I felt so badly in my body still. She said, we can do this. And she held the faith enough for both of us. 6 months after we worked together, she said, well, what are your next goals? And I said, oh, I want to come out of this leg brace. Let's ditch the cane completely. I want to get rid of all this equipment. I just want to keep building and getting stronger. And so she's writing everything down. She packs up her bag, like a Mary Poppins bag kind of thing.
I can visualize it. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like she had magic in there. Of course, the magic was in, me. But
yes.
At any rate, so she has her bag. She's got her hand on the doorknob, literally. And I said, wait. And she said, what? I said, I have another goal. And she turned around and she said, okay, what is it? Now, this is one of those moments in life where you say something, it doesn't go through your brain. It comes right from the depths of your heart and soul. And I said, this is February of 2008. I want to run the Boston Marathon. I want to run it next year. I hear Spalding Rehab has a race for rehab teams, so I'll be a charity runner. Now, I'd never run a day in my life. And she turned around. There were many responses she could have made, Erin. She could have said, okay, you're crazy. 1. 2, well, don't you think maybe you should start with a smaller goal? You've never run a day in your life. I mean, you didn't even run the bases in gym class. Didn't say any of that. She took her hand off the doorknob, put down her bag, looked me straight in the eye, and she said, you are going to need a pair of running shoes.
Oh my gosh, I just got chills from head to toe. Oh, one person can make all the difference. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
So she sent me to Marathon Sports, and I was fitted for my first pair of running shoes in my entire life. And off I went, and I started training for Boston. But the cool part is that night around the dinner table, I said, hey, guess what, Tom and Ruth Ann, my husband and daughter, I have a new goal. And they're like, okay, what is it? I'm going to run the Boston Marathon next year. And they're like, oh, right. I said, no, I'm serious. And they said, well, you're not going to run it alone. We're going to run it with you. And I said,
gosh.
Yeah, they thought I was kidding, Erin.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so Janine trained all of us. She trained Team McManus. We raised over $10,535 for Spalding. And it was just the most incredible day of my life, second only to giving birth to my twins. It was just...
Wow.
Yeah.
What a beautiful story. Oh my gosh, you could not even get into the shower by yourself.
Right.
What, a year and a half before?
Yeah.
That is remarkable. Oh my gosh, that is incredible.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. That is, I have chills truly from head to toe. So you've written 7 books. Since when have you started writing these books? Because I am like blown away by all of you.
Oh, thank you, Erin. So after I ran the marathon, I knew that I wanted to tell my story. And so I wrote the book Coming Home, a memoir of healing, hope, and possibility. And I thought, okay, well, I'm a once and done kind of gal with a book. And I'd been blogging. And then I had an injury in 2014 and my left knee blew out. And so I had overdone it. And I know, hard for you to believe about me. Yeah.
That does not surprise me.
In 2011, I had stopped running for a while. My nephew had taken his life, and it really devastated me. My dad had also taken his life, and that's how that nightmare ended. He finally took his own life. And then in 2011, after my nephew took his life, I wasn't in good shape, and I should have stayed. I know we should have, but it would have been helpful if I would have stayed with the running. But in 2013, after the bombings, I said, "Whoa, I got to get back to my village, my running community," and so I started running again, and I ended up overdoing it. After when I blew out the knee, they said, "You're going to need a total knee replacement. You need to stop running." And I said, it's not really good advice for me. I really need running. And so my chiropractor got me back on the roads. So my second book is called Going the Distance, The Power of Endurance. And so that talks about my comeback from the knee injury. But I wasn't done yet. And I ended up running 3 Bermuda half marathons consecutively, because that was on my bucket list. And so my third book in the trilogy of transformation is The Adventures of Runner Girl 1953, the year I was born. Yes, I'm 71. And the pandemic hit. And so I wrote 2 books during the pandemic that's primarily poetry. Hope is a Garden, poems and essays from the 2020 pandemic, and Into the Light, emerging from the 2020 pandemic. And then I thought, okay, I'm done writing. And the universe said, you've got a story to tell. I had an adverse reaction to the second COVID vaccine. Oof. And now, it could have happened to anybody. And so I had a major setback. And then in 2023, I came back. And my 7th book chronicles that, as well as my celebration of turning 70. And this year, my goal is to get up to the half marathon distance, and then next year do another 10K.
Well, you call me, I'll run with you.
All right.
We'll do it together.
All right.
I would love that. Oh my gosh, you're so inspiring. I love the fact that over and over again, you have had one challenge after the next, but it has not broken you, your spirit, and the message that you are getting out to people, not just by speaking, but also by writing it down and publishing all these books. And I just am honored to speak with you. And I'm so grateful that you fought, because you really are a light in this world that we desperately need.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today.
Oh, Erin, it's really, as I said, what an honor and a blessing. And, out of what happened to you, I just feel there's going to be such amazing things that happen as a result of it. And again, it's not to minimize. We, by being positive, a lot of people think, oh, well, you're just ignoring the feelings and everything. Oh, no, we all go through them. But the thing is that, we bring the goodness and the lightness and the light to the surface. So I'm so grateful to you. I'm so grateful that you are making the most delicious lemonade out of the lemons that came your way. And I'm just...
They're never far, but you gotta make the best of them when you can. So that's why I'm here, girl. That's why I'm here. Well, thank you again. You are a wonderful human, and we can find your books on Amazon. Okay, perfect. MaryMcManus.com. Blessings to you. Thank you so much.
Right back at you, Erin.
So I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I thought I'd give you a little personal story here. And it's about our boy. He had a massive stroke during birth, and we almost lost him. I mean, we were actually told by Boston Children's Hospital, that's where he was transferred to, that the first 48 hours were the most critical. And so the NICU, I mean, he had a breathing tube and a feeding tube, and it was terrifying. And somehow, some way, he pulled through. And the doctor in charge of the NICU said to us, you have a really amazing fighter there. And, we, of course, we're so lucky. Yes, he's such a fighter. And he said, no, you don't understand. The majority of children that have the kind of stroke that Gabe had do not survive it. So then we felt even more blessed. And the entire time I kept saying, just keep him alive. I can work with alive. And by the grace of God and the incredible people at Boston Children's Hospital, we have a beautiful 12-year-old boy who is just the definition of resilience. And so not only did Boston Children's Hospital save his life, when he was born. But then a year later, he needed to have brain surgery where they completely disconnected the left side of his brain. And that is where he had this massive stroke. It was just causing chaos in his little life. And the only way that he had any sort of a chance to not experience seizures and really never progress at all is if he had what's called a hemispherectomy. And he did. So everything this incredible boy does, he does with the right side of his brain. And he is a walking miracle. And yes, that's one of the things they didn't know if he could do. And he does that now. So every little thing that may be little to somebody else is huge for us. And we are so thankful and so grateful. So we were trying to think of something years ago that we could do to thank the hospital. And the hardest thing we could think to do was run the Boston Marathon. So we did. That was in 2016. We both ran it. My husband, this is how you know that he was in Naval Special Forces and then was an officer for all these years, 26 years in the Navy. And here's how you know this, because the man crossed the finish line and he was limping for the longest time after. And I kept saying, will you please go to a doctor? A month later, I finally convinced him to do this, to which the doctor said, what'd you do a month ago? Because he did all these x-rays and CAT scans. He said, you have 5 stress fractures. So that means that man crossed the finish line with 5 stress fractures, one of which was so severe, it was almost completely cut in half. So I said, well, babe, I really want to do the marathon again because Boston Children's Hospital saved our son's life twice. So I want to do it one more time. And he's like, babe, I am there to cheer you on loudly. But I'm one and done because I already broke my body enough the first time. So I did it the next year as well. But when we ran, again, it was all for Boston Children's Hospital. We probably raised around, I want to say maybe close to $50,000. It was just massive generosity from friends and family and strangers. And that in the back of my head going, I got to do this for the place that saved our boy. And having Gabe's picture on our singlet and, you know, being able to look down and see him was just always an awesome inspiration. Which brings me to somebody else that I want to introduce you to.
It's time for the Shining Bright Spotlight on Erin O'Malley's Feel Good Frequency.
So I am here with one of my best friends in the world. This is Bob Catanazzo. Hi.
Yes.
You are running the Boston Marathon this year for the 15th time for Boston Children's Hospital.
Yes. 15 times.
What made you want to do it 15 times?
Simple as this. I have a healthy kid. My wife and I are blessed to have had a healthy child. Yeah, not without hiccups, obviously, but we've been blessed to have a healthy son who's now 24. And that's been my answer now for the last few years.
This is your last one, correct?
Yes. Yeah, I can sense the eye rolls, but yes, I think it's time. No pun intended. It's been an amazing run. My true hope is that somebody can take my bib on race day going forward and have their life change the way mine was.
So you are running for our son, Gabe, which I absolutely love.
Yes, I am honored to run for Gabe. It's the least I could do for you guys. I mean, you and Jody ran for Children's yourself. You know what the hospital has meant to you and, and more importantly, Gabe. And, what you guys have been through kind of makes it easier for me. But, when you get to that point where you don't think you could take another step, you think of your why.
Can you give a rough estimate of how much you've raised in 15 years for Boston Children's Hospital?
I'm probably venturing close to $150,000 or $160,000.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, but, I've been blessed to have an amazing support system, which truly starts at home. An amazing group of friends and family who kind of write me in every year, so to speak. So I've been very, very lucky as a fundraiser. I really have.
Well, we've been lucky to know you and to have you run for our boy. So give it everything on Monday, and thanks for being you.
You know I will, and I love you guys. And Gabe, and he'll be on my siglet. And when I hit that stage, they'll give me my strength.
I promise that this is not going to be all about Boston all the time or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure that today's episode really revolved around something huge in the city. And there's a whole lot of personal things that go into the Boston Marathon for me as well. So that's one of the reasons why I had the guest that I had on today. But next week, I've got an amazing woman I'm talking to in the UK. So this is what I mean by it's not going to just be Boston. I have people that I have found from all over the world with inspiring stories, and I'm so excited to share them with you. If you know somebody that you think would be great on this podcast that's inspiring, maybe went through something and then came out of it stronger and even started their own nonprofit, you can message me on social media anytime. I would absolutely love that, or even leave a little note down below. So in the spirit of today's podcast, I leave you with one of my crazy stories, and it happened in 2017. It was my Boston Marathon run. So 2 days before, I got the flu. And the morning I woke up for said marathon, I was a hot mess. The one thing they tell you when you go to run a marathon is never to do anything that day that you've not done before. So I ignored all that and took any medicine that I could find to help me just breathe so I could run the distance. And oh my, I was bad. But I kept going. I kept going and going. I took every orange that every little child had holding out for me on the way. I finally found my coach around mile maybe 17, 18. And he looked at me and he goes, "Stay away from the medical tent. Get on this side of me." And I'm like, "Jeff, do I look that bad?" He goes, "You don't look good." And my whole goal was just stay standing because I knew all these people going back and forth on bicycles, they're looking for people that are about to drop. And when you drop, you're done. They're not going to be like, "Oh, let's just see if you can still walk." They don't want you dying on the course. Who can blame them? So Jeff had me on the other side of him so the medical people couldn't see me. And somehow, some way, that man got me all the way to Boylston Street. Now, Boylston is the last street. You can see the finish line. It is right there. So I start hightailing it. And he's like, whoa, where do you think you're going? And up and down Boylston Street is nothing but spectators. There is nowhere for you to go run and hide and puke, which, by the way, I did almost every mile up until then. And he's like, "Do not go this fast. I know we see the finish line, but it's further away than you think. And the last thing you want is to throw up in the middle of the street and have it be taped and YouTubed and sent all over the world." And I was like, you know what? You're right. So I pulled back a little bit. But the second I crossed that finish line, 1 step, 2 step, puke, like 4 or 5 times. And I look up, and if you remember the Boston Marathon in 2013 with the awful bombings, there was that gentleman, Carlos, with the cowboy hat who jumped over the railings and saved that man, Jeff Bauman, who ended up losing both of his legs. So Carlos, right there at the finish line for me with the cowboy hat, and he's leaning over going, "Are you okay? Wow. Are you all right?" I'm like, no, I'll be fine. I'm here. I made it. And so somebody came behind me with a wheelchair, and they're wheeling me into the medical tent. And I was like, "Where is my medal? Oh my God, you are not taking me anywhere until I find that medal." And they said, "Well, you can't be wheeled over to get the medal. You have to walk over." So I was like, "Hold the wheelchair. I'm coming back." So I pulled myself out of it, went, got the medal, came back, sat in the chair, ended up in the medical tent where I needed IV fluids, and I crossed the finish line, I ended up finding out, with a 102.9 degree fever. So when I say this podcast is going to be successful, and we are going to find all the feel-good stories, and we are going to put positivity out there, I mean it, because I do not take no for an answer, especially when it's something that I just know I'm supposed to do. So take that story. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your week. I'm looking forward to next week already. Thank you so much for being here with me.